Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you. So I'm going to do a little follow-up to my last video explaining what gluten was and why it might be dangerous for you. I want to explain to you what gluten-free actually truly means. Now, gluten-free products have obviously increased in popularity in recent years, but with so many, products that are labeled free that are out there on the market, it can be hard to know how free a product really is unless there's standardized labeling. Now, avoiding gluten is really important to people with celiac disease because they can experience some really adverse effects if they consume it. Other people prefer to avoid it because they feel better or believe it's a healthier, alternative or healthier way to eat. Gluten is what gives dough its elasticity, its shape, strength, and texture to bread and other grain products. Some gluten-free foods are naturally gluten-free and healthy. For example, like your apples or your sweet potatoes. Other gluten-free foods are processed to remove gluten or processed without gluten-free containing ingredients, but may still be high in calories and full of additives and low in fiber. Now, gluten-free bread, for example, that's a practical alternative for a person with celiac disease because it contains no gluten or only minor traces of it. Now, what does gluten-free truly mean? In August of 2013, the FDA, or the United States Food and Drug Administration, issued a new definition for gluten-free for the purpose of food labeling. For a food to be labeled as gluten-free, the FDA states that it must contain no more than 20 parts per million of gluten. The choice of 20 ppm rather than 0 ppm is because current technology cannot really measure gluten presence below 20 ppm. Now, evidence suggests that trace amounts of gluten defined as up to 20 ppm does not have any adverse health effects on people with celiac disease. Now, the use of labeling is voluntary for manufacturers, but if they do use it, consumers will know that their products really are gluten-free. Now, any product that has less than 20 ppm of gluten can carry any of the following labels: gluten-free, free of gluten, without gluten, or no gluten. People who wish to avoid all traces of gluten will choose to eat rice instead of cereals that might contain it. Those who can tolerate trace amounts of gluten can consume cereal-based products where the gluten has been removed, but they need to know that the level of gluten is minimal. The labeling system can help these people. Now, a food that by nature is gluten-free does not have to carry a gluten-free label, but it can do so if it meets all FDA requirements for an FDA gluten-free food. Now, for this reason, some products such as bottled water are pretty unlikely to have a gluten-free label even though they don't contain gluten on them. Now, is all food labeled? The FDA also encourages restaurants to really adopt gluten-free labeling for the benefit of customers and to work with local and state governments to oversee this. The FDA does not prescribe any particular type of labeling or recommend a location for the label as long as it doesn't interfere with mandatory labeling information and that it's meeting the regulatory requirements. They do point out that some organizations offer gluten-free certification. While the FDA does not endorse any specific certification program or labeling, they do actually accept it. Now, not all products are labeled, but all foods and beverages must comply with the regulation that if it does carry a gluten-free label, it has to absolutely contain less than 20 ppm of gluten. And this includes packaged foods, dietary supplements, fruits, vegetables, eggs in their shells, and fish. Items that are not covered include meat, poultry, some egg products, because these are regulated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and most alcoholic beverages as these are covered by the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. Now, who should avoid gluten? Celiac disease is an immune system disorder that is believed to affect around roughly 3 million Americans, and it normally appears in childhood, but it can affect people at any age. The exact cause actually remains a mystery, but it appears to run in your family. Now, in a person with celiac disease, gluten causes the immune system to react, resulting in damage to the absorptive surface of the small intestine. Now, this prevents vital nutrients, fats, carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, and minerals from being absorbed into the bloodstream. The gluten protein that causes this reaction are the prolamins known as gelatin, saccharine, and hordein. Now, wheat contains gelatin, barley, saccharine, and rye hordein. Now, some varieties of oats may contain a form of gluten and some types may have it because of cross-contamination. Crossbred grains such as triticale, and can also contain gluten as well. Celiac disease can lead to chronic diarrhea, weight loss, fatigue, anemia. It can lead to some like rashy skin, depression, and irritability. These are common symptoms, especially in children. Many people with celiac disease have no symptoms, but complications can arise in time. Some complications can include intestinal cancers, short stature and stunted growth, infertility and miscarriage, nutritional deficiencies, and even osteoporosis. There's no cure for celiac disease. The only effective treatment is to avoid foods and products that contain gluten. So, if you want to go gluten-free, it's not easy. Wheat, rye, and barley are featured in many basic foodstuffs, including bread, breakfast cereal, and pasta. So, giving up gluten means finding a substitute for these products. Foods that are safe to eat: fruits, vegetables, raw, plain meat and poultry, raw or frozen plain fish and seafood, dairy, beans, legumes, nuts. Rice is a good source of carbohydrates, but it's worth checking the label in case there is any cross-contamination. Here's some other options: corn or maize, soy, potato, rutabaga, tapioca, beans, quinoa, millet, buckwheat, flax, chia. These are all good options. Now, the FDA's labeling system makes it easier for people with celiac disease to choose from a range of products that contain less than 20 ppm available in many grocery stores. Those include gluten-free bread, sausages, cereals, and so on. And it's important to read and consider the labels carefully. Wheat-free, for example, does not necessarily mean gluten-free. Now, many other products contain hidden gluten, for example, in the flavorings. Rice may be gluten-free, but puffed rice cereal, for example, can contain malt flavoring with gluten. Now, soups and sauces, processed fruits and vegetables, candies, things like licorice, and pre-prepared smoothies may also contain gluten, as can such like items like medications, lip balms, and even vitamin supplements. Drinks and liquids made with malt that are not distilled, such as beers and malt vinegars, will also contain gluten. The FDA's gluten-free regulation has made it easier for people with celiac disease to choose appropriate foods, but it's important to really read the labels carefully. The FDA encourages people that become sick after eating any product to seek medical care and to then contact the FDA. Now, if the person suspects incorrect food labeling, they're advised to report it to MedWatch, which is the FDA's program for providing safety information and reporting adverse effects. So that is what gluten-free actually means, because I know that when you see things like that, it can be something that you just buy and don't really know. You just think, oh, it's gluten-free. Okay, so great, I'm going to get it. But you need to understand what that actually means. So that being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli signing off.